we've got say a special guest. You know who this man is. He's been on the channel before. His name is Lynn Westover. Lynn, you can bring yourself in and show yourself on camera. I'm figuring out the intricacies of Rumble Studio. Lynn Westover is, I don't want to define you by your spouse, but you're married to Allison Morrow, former, I don't say mainstream media journalist, but legacy media journalist, former, independent, amazing person. You've been on the channel. We know each other well, and I like you. My kid loves you. Can't wait to go back. But you are a former sniper, but then some. We went over it in detail when you were on the channel, and we talked, boy howdy, in person. Tell everybody who you are, and you're gonna help us try to flesh out what the hell we just witnessed yesterday.
Yeah. So, hi, Lynn. Go by Sherpa. Currently, I own a business where I train law enforcement, military, security, first responders in behavior pattern recognition and threat detection. I most notably had a career in the Marine Corps. I worked in special operations. I was a force reconnaissance Marine and a scout sniper. And many of the things that are germane to what we're talking about today is aside from that background that I have as being a scout sniper and doing counter sniper operations, both in Iraq and Afghanistan. Specifically in Iraq, I personally had to help deal with the Juba sniper threat. But also, when I left the military, I did a lot of executive protection details, kidnap and ransom due diligence. And so I have a little bit of insight too from the protective detail aspect and some of the advanced teams when they show up to a scenario or a situation like this, and some of the things that have to be taken into consideration when you're prepping for a high profile individual such as Donald Trump would be. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot thumbnail sketch that I would give about my background.
And when you say counter sniper, that means that you're looking for snipers. You're a sniper looking for a sniper.
Yeah. The thought process always is, hey, you would know, being a sniper, it's kind of like, it's that tactical cunning aspect. You would know what to look for. And a lot of times, because there is some misnomers there. A lot of people think that, okay, well, I'm looking for the sniper in the hide. But the thing that gets forgotten about quite often is, well, the individual, the quote unquote sniper or designated marksman or shooter, whatever you want to call them, they have to ingress and they have to egress. And so specific to like this situation here, I'll get just a little bit ahead of myself for a second, but this one thing that's very specific about what happened last night is, in my eyes, regardless of what the end state was for that individual that was getting into that position, had to know that was it. So I almost look at that as like a suicide by cop type of situation. So because I've seen a lot of the things on the Twitterverse or X, and the conspiracy theorists around the world unite, as far as what the intentions were with regard to what went down with this thing. At the end of the day, the individual that got up onto that rooftop 130 yards away from a former president who is now a candidate for president had to know that there was a almost certainty that you were not walking away from that. So the reason why I bring that up is because that speaks to mindset and intent. So when you talk about a true believer, somebody who is willing to, I am going to go give it the whole 9 yards, so to speak, then that says a lot. And I would not, I saw a lot of things as far as people denigrating the fact that, like, oh, this 20-year-old kid and this is his political leanings this way or that way, or, what's the so what behind that? And it's, hey, none of that really matters to me as far as, like, how did it happen? That's my big question. Well, how did an individual get within 130 yards of an elevated position? And to really describe how lucky he was, I know for a fact that even a non-school trained, meaning a non-sniper, just somebody straight out of infantry training battalion, they could put a 5.56 round or a 2.23 round into the brain bucket of a human being at ranges of up to 500 yards, with depending on the weapon system, depending on the optics you have on there, and so on and so forth. So the fact that it literally grazed him, I mean, we're talking about a manner of like a half a degree difference.
Can I ask?
Totally a different situation.
I'm going to ask a number of. They're not going to be. What's the word I'm looking for? Like just looking for gore for the sake of gore. When you say brain bucket, and I'm not trying to be funny, is that like a term that's used in the field? That's if you get within a certain range, then that's when you make catastrophic. That's when you make catastrophic injury.
Yeah, to demonstrate it on the anatomy right here with myself, like we talk about a T-box shot. We call that DRT, which means dead right there. And so what that means is all sympathetic, parasympathetic nerve response is gone because I've just basically severed your central nervous system. There's a lot of reasons and intents for that, but at the end of the day, it's whether it's right here or from the side, you're looking right about here at the ear, it's going to sever that central nervous system, and it means everything stops. It's lights out. The individual who gets hit, they're not feeling nothing. And if they, had a weapon or any type of, maybe an arming device, say we're talking about a suicide vest wearer or something like that, then the intent was so they have no, flinch response when the shot takes place. So that's what I mean by the brain bucket. That's lights out, or we also say, hey, going right in between the running lights, like it's lights out, you're done. And so, I mean, the dude was definitely going for it, given where that round went. I mean, it was about as close could get.
From what we understand, it was an AR. I mean, I'm saying words. I know what they mean, but other people might know better. 223 is the type of round that I've been hearing. Can I ask you also? It's not to be gory. I just like that type of round. Once it makes impact, does it splinter off and cause like that type of explosive catastrophic reaction, or is it more like a hole and that type of?
So without getting too scientific in the terminal ballistics, so you have a couple different types of ballistics, right? You have internal, external, and terminal ballistics. Internal ballistics are the ballistics that occur within the weapon system from the moment that the primer is engaged and the round is traveling down the barrel. Once the round travels down the barrel and it leaves the crown of the barrel, it is now entered externally to the weapon system. So now you have external ballistics. So everything from, depending on the range of the round being fired, you hear people talk about like the Coriolis effect. You have altitude density. So the density of the air, depending on what altitude you're at, temperature, winds, all those things come into play and will change the trajectory, change where the round impacts. And then you have terminal ballistics. So specifically speaking, terminal ballistics, that type of round, really any size round that enters into the cranial cavity of your head is going to, for the most part, you can expect it's going to have catastrophic effect. So there are differences in rounds. So you can have the same caliber of round, but it creates a different fluid shockwave when it enters the media that it is engaging with, the terminal ballistics of it. So, but more often than not, like when you're looking at a 223 caliber round, it's gonna you're gonna see a small entrance wound, but wherever it exits, you'll see a slightly larger, probably about the size of a fist, exit wound, and it's done. I've personally seen fellow Marines, 3 hit in the head and 1 survive, unbelievably survive. But yeah, I mean, I've seen people survive that, but it is few and far between. So, I mean, I got to say it again. That was so close, so close. I mean,
now, so if I understand from a security protocol perspective, that shooter never should have got anywhere close to being able to take that shot if people were doing their job.
Yeah, I have a couple questions on that. Aside from that, because I also saw, and again, you're going to get a lot of interviews from people who I was there, I saw the whole thing, officer, but I saw a short interview of a guy that said that he had been pointing this dude low crawling on that roof for 3 minutes. But it does go back to the whole saying of, oh, well, if you see something, say something. And then it's like, well, if you see something, say something, do something. But it's all those are buzzwords, buzz terms. I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, number one, and I don't know who to say it to. And when you've got thousands of people around screaming as well, like that stuff gets all lost in the fray. But yeah, the big question I have is, I mean, to me, the guy identified that as a good perch. I don't know why there wasn't another counter sniper team already on that rooftop, quite frankly.
Let me bring up
what
I
don't know details, and I don't know details about that. So I myself want to be careful, but I do think that it's a question worth asking is how you have inner perimeter, you have outer perimeter, and you have what we call a defense in depth. 130 yards is close. That's 1 1/3 football fields.
Mm-hmm.
That's close.
This is I'm bringing up. You guys can see this, right? The full picture here. This is what Tim Kennedy, who's also a military badass. For anybody who doesn't know him, I don't know who doesn't know him, but Tim Kennedy says, "How did the shooter even get on the roof? I've been at several events for Trump, and there's no way you can get anything going that close to him. I measured it on 150.1 yards. This is complete negligence and incompetence, or it was intentional." And then we have this roof here from the parking lot. And then we'll get into the issue about people saying, I saw this guy, and it would be art. You wouldn't believe it for what it is. I mean, I don't know. That is covering a foot and a half in a freeze frame of a second.
And you know, that's a little
loud. It's loud. So the question here is, the guy's looking down his sniper at the roof, presumably. You hear shots, and then he takes the shot. I'm going to bring this up, but not removing the television. Sorry. How do I stop this? Stop that. Sorry. Let me go back here and take this out. Look, it's easy playing Monday morning quarterback, but then at some point in time, there's just common sense in asking the question. If that was a good shot for the sniper, the shooter, how the hell was there not a sniper on it or continually manning it? And you'll tell me if you can field this one. People, there's some thread going around on 4chan that purports to be that guy, that Secret Service agent or that shooter guy, allegedly saying that he was asking for permission to take the shot because he had identified the guy for 45 seconds earlier, and he was told to stand down and wait. And then he shot only after. I mean, I don't want to share that because it sounds a little fishy. There's no way of verifying it. What's clear, and you can probably tell us, he's clearly seeing something down the scope, and he's seeing something suspicious, and clearly waits until shots are fired.
So yeah, so you have a couple of, I guess the way I would put it is relationships here, right? Oh, by the way, Barnes, good to see you, bud.
Sorry, I forgot to introduce Barnes. Robert, how goes the battle, sir?
Good.
It's good to see you, Robert. At any rate, like, you have a couple different relationships going on here, and each organization, they have different SOPs or standard operating procedures. They have different tactics and how communication works, because when you're in a situation like that, you are dealing with a lot of stress, and you have things like channel capacity to deal with. So channel capacity is your brain, your frontal cortex's ability to handle multiple tasks at a time. On average, for the average human being, it's 7 plus or minus 1 or 2. The reason why I even bring that up is when you have comms going on in your ear, that's going to take up at least one channel. So now if you've got to think about whatever's being said to you as you're trying to look down a scope, you're trying to calculate wind, you're trying to also report what it is you're seeing, you're talking with your spotter's also looking at things. There's a lot going on there. So, again, without knowing the veracity of what you just said regards to what was going on with the 4chan thing, I will say that is not an uncommon thing that happens to snipers. I have a photo during the Juba sniper days of me in Fallujah. I was doing sniper Overwatch, and I got so frustrated with what was going on in my ear that you can actually see in the photo, I ripped my headset off. and I was having only my spotter do the communications for me because it was so distracting. So I will say there is a potential amount of credibility to that. What I'll also add into it is that, that is as an individual getting ready to take a shot like that, we'll say it's a sanctioned shot. I am under the color of law. I'm either a military service member or I am a police sniper, so on and so forth. It is such an up close and personal thing that you are getting ready to do. If you figure, we'll just look at it like this, like you guys, everybody at home, and then you guys here, as we're talking on this live stream, just imagine that, okay, you're looking through your scope and you're looking at this. You're looking at my face. You are looking at the face of the person that you are about to end their life. So even when you're in the right, that is not an easy thing to do. And there's a lot of stress that gets bottled up into that. And so you want to make damn sure that when you take that 1.5 pounds or whatever it is set for that trigger, because it is a precision weapon system, when you take that 1.5 pounds out and it's out, like there's no pulling that round back down range. That decision is finite and final. And so I think that, a person who gets put in that role and is like, you train to be able to do that, with half hoping that you never have to. And then the other half is like, well, when the time is for you to do it, that not only you do it right, but you are righteous in doing that. Nobody wakes up in the morning and wants to just go kill somebody. I don't care who you are. So I would flip in that perspective around too, because talking about tactical cunning, putting myself in the shoes of the shooter, the individual that shot at former President Trump, I would say that, well, on one hand, that's a fairly easy shot. On the other hand, it's not so easy when it comes time for real. So just to give you an idea of like, even with iron sights. So iron sights, there's no optics, there's no magnification. In the military, when you learn on iron sights with a, M16 variant or an M4 variant, you also call it a lollipop, but it looks like that. So you have a front sight post, that's this, and then you have your rear sight aperture, and you're basically trying to make a lollipop. And then when you center it on your target, point of aim, point of impact, it should hit. The reason why I bring that up, typically for zeroing, so when you talk about a battle sight zero or a BZO, when you're zeroing a weapon system for iron sights like that, the zero is typically done at 300 yards. For precision weapons, we typically will do a zero at 100 yards. So for those weapon systems that the counter snipers were shooting, I would guarantee that they're probably quarter minute of angle. They're definitely sub-minute of angle, but even at a minute of angle, to understand what that means, is that means at 1 minute of angle, at 100 yards, I could put a 5-round shot group into a 1-inch square.
Okay, stop. At 100 yards, you could put 5 shots into a 1-inch square, which is, let's just say it's about that. That's about the size of a small plum.
Right. So, for this guy to take those shots, and I don't know what the specific characteristics of the weapons were the weapon was that he shot at President Trump with. But what I will say is this, you can guarantee that he probably had a lot of stress. His heart rate was going. And again, you know what you're getting ready to do, what you're about to do. That might account for why another possible reason why he quote unquote missed. It's still a hit. It just didn't have desired terminal ballistics effects. So again, just to show how close this was. I mean, I can't say that enough. This was so freaking close. It's not even funny how close this was.
Now, explain to people, like, when you're looking at outer security, inner security, the further perimeter, everybody that I've seen talk about this, is that they don't understand how the perimeter wasn't secure. And supposedly this building was outside any perimeter, which did not make sense to me given the range you're talking about. That first of all, when you're assessing perimeter, you're assessing risk of someone doing exactly what you're describing. And can you just so you can describe how do you go about establishing a perimeter, what forms that predicate, and then when you do, what do you do with that information?
So it's a great question, and it's going to be situation dependent on the actual geographics of the area and the proxemics of all the things that are around. So you have things
because
like
you're looking at how someone might be a sniper. In other words, so that's why topography matters. That's why buildings matter. That's why location of the speaker matters, is because you're looking at someone who can use particularly a sniper risk is what defines perimeter need.
Well, one thing, for example, I could very simply do this on Google Earth, because we actually used to do this overseas, because it was a lot faster than using our S2 or Intel shops. But you could go on Google Earth and you could do what we call a line of sight survey. So a line of sight survey I'm going to use this notepad here. Hopefully I can show this for you. Say I took a cross section of, I had two positions. All right. So I don't know if you can see that, but we'll say that right here, please forgive the crudity of this drawing. I apologize. It's not to scale, but that's a Back to the Future quote for those who hobla. But say this is my shooter. And this is my target right here. A line of sight survey would be as if I went on Google Earth and I wanted to look at this cross section of this terrain and make sure that, say that there was a house right here, that house was not going to get in the way of the flight path of my round. And you would take it so far as so sometimes, depending on the range of our shots that we would take, you have things like bullet drop. So you would have it where you actually clear certain obstacles. But I knew a guy that took a shot. He didn't actually take it through a window. He was looking through a window, but the shot actually went over this corner of the building because of where where it was at. So then when the shot hit what he was aiming at on another building, this was in Fallujah, they were looking around. They thought it came from a different building than what he was actually shooting from. And so again, ways that you would accomplish that is, in that example, is a line of sight survey. So I'm looking at what's the actual line of sight of that. So I'm looking at, hey, what are obstacles, and even vegetation. So in a classic sniper situation, say I was in a hinterland kind of environment where I was doing the Tom Berenger, going through the jungle or going through the wood line. Even when I set up an FFP, which is a final firing position, I want to make sure that I have zero deflection of my round once it leaves the barrel. So what deflection is even something as simple as a little limb, a little leaf or something like that. If it hits it, it could cause deflection in that round and totally throw off a first shot. The other thing you have to consider as well are things like a cold bore shot. So when your rifle is cold, the round is going to impact a little differently than when it heats up after you've begun firing. So in order to get a guaranteed first hit cold bore shot is what we would call it. That means you've got to have a lot of time downrange collecting that data on your own gun, so you know exactly how, on certain weather conditions, where that round's going to go in the first shot, and then being able to adjust after that for your follow-on shots. So for those counter snipers in the protection detail, they would know that. They would have to be prepared to do that. So again, that adds into the stress that they're dealing with. Of, okay, I've identified a threat. I'm making the decision. I'm pulling the trigger on this guy. And now I hope my round hits, because I got to consider my backdrop. Those rounds, just because they hit a person, they don't stop. And now you're thinking about firing into a crowd. Police snipers, a lot of people look at military snipers because oh, the long range. And yeah, long range is tough. Don't get me wrong. I'm not denigrating that. However, that close range where, hey, I literally need to get this round exactly where it needs to go, or else I potentially have civilian casualties because of it. That's a stressful shoot. And so all those things play in now when you're designing that inner outer perimeter, because I can't just consider the sniper thing. I have to look at, okay, possible VBIED, vehicle-borne improvised explosive device, possible impact device where somebody just rams a car through. What are the checkpoints that I have people coming through? Do I give you'll have individuals that are blending into the crowd, that their whole job, their whole focus is to identify, the needle in a stack of needles. So you'll have people embedded in the crowd just looking for people, and you create basically these channelizations before they actually get to that main area to hopefully identify that before they get danger close to the president, or in this case, the president.
Lynn, I mean, you've fired a sniper rifle, not I presume, but you have. I just looking at this video, because this was one of the ones that also caught my attention. This is where the sniper had been in position, seemingly looking down the scope, and we all presume at the target because that's where he fires. I know nothing of this, but I would not imagine that a sniper rifle is supposed to bounce off the ground the way this seems to bounce, or is he maneuvering it to take the shot?
If you want to really see something that said, take a look what happened.
Can you
want to really see something?
Sorry, let me just turn the volume down a little bit. Are you able to tell anything from that in terms of?
Said, take a look what happened.
Yeah, so that little pop up over his scope, that is. So when let me see how I can explain this. When you're in a scope, and I don't know what power he had his scope on, I'd be willing to bet he had a variable power scope, so it'd be anywhere from you're looking at 2.5 power up to 15 power. I didn't like having that high of a power on my scope, because usually what that meant was it raised my line of sight over my bore. And so now I had to have all this extra crap for stock weld and things like that. And quite frankly, that's what I had a spotters for. So my spotter, with the Leopold Mark IV spotting scope, he had up to 40 power. So if I wanted him to zoom in on something and get more positive ID for me, a lot of times the more power you have in your scope, that over exaggerates pardon my French here, but it will over exaggerate poor marksmanship fundamentals, shitty shooting technique. Anybody who's done it before, and Viva, next time you come out to the house, I'll show you on my sniper rifle the difference between just looking at 12 power versus 3 power. And it's a world of difference, because you see every heartbeat, you see every move and breath you take, and it's distracting in scope. So what's significant about what he was doing is I think he was trying to confirm, because you're so zoomed in, he was trying to confirm, wait, is that where I think that is? And making sure of that. And then he gets back in and he goes to engage, because he's realizing things are happening quickly here. And, all I would say about this, because I don't want to judge the guy. I'm not in his shoes. I wasn't there. The reality of it is you get put in some of the weirdest positions ever as a sniper. Nothing's ever perfect. You don't have a great prone position. I mean, there he had a tripod. It's funny, the tripod my wife used for a long time after we met was my old shooting tripod. And we used to make the joke all the time. I was like, yeah, I was taking shots on that tripod before you were taking shots, Allie. But the point is you'll get set up in a position and you'll think and feel that, okay, this is great. I'm stable. Everything's good. And then reality hits and, things move around. That's the reality of combat. And I'll call this that. It is, for all intents and purposes, combat. It's not like the movies where dudes are doing backflips and everything's super, graceful. There's a lot of falling down. There's a lot of mistakes that get made. There's a lot of doing things on the fly. And it was funny. As a sniper, I did yoga. just so that I could be more flexible, because some of these weird, awkward positions I would have to get into, you had to have a level of flexibility and strength to be able to do that, and then be willing to sit in that position for long periods of time. So based on what I saw in that video of that counter sniper, is like, yeah, it looked like he was trying to confirm something, get back into his rifle, get engaged. And then it looked like, unfortunately, that the position may not have been as stable as he had hoped. But at that point, he's like, hey, I got to get gas on it. I gotta put this guy down.
So in terms of the security protocols, would your instinctual view be to confirm what others have said, that they don't understand how this individual was able to get to the location he was able to get to with a gun in the first place, without putting blame on anybody, not knowing who's responsible? Just that if security protocols is correctly like, for example, one issue here is President Biden has refused the repeated request of President Trump's security team to increase their security team in order to make sure they have adequate coverage. President Biden has also refused coverage, any Secret Service coverage, despite numerous direct threats against his other opponent, Robert Francis Kennedy Jr., whose father was assassinated, whose uncle was assassinated. So one of the questions is whether there was adequate service security provided because of the refusal of the Biden administration to provide it. But putting that aside, from your experience in doing protective security, is this supposed to ever be even capable of happening, of somebody walking in with a gun, walking up on a roof, and being able to have time to fire at somebody?
I would say that the gold standard would be no, it's impossible. The reality of it is totally possible. In all those people that work those details, all those structures, all the infrastructure, all the policies and procedures that surround that are based on lessons learned. As we used to say, shout out to my buddy VB, call him Vanderblast, but his name's Vanderplas. There's a long story to that, but he used to always say, hey, SOPs are written in blood. And that means that somebody had to get hurt, somebody had to get killed. And usually it results in an immediate knee-jerk reaction. Like speaking, talking about the Kennedys, that's why you don't see open cars anymore when the president goes for a drive. That was something that changed with that. I would say those are questions that me and I have a little chat thread that I was going back and forth with a couple of my buddies. One guy who's a former CIA officer who was also a Marine with me. I actually worked for him. Another buddy of mine, all three of us were instructors together, and they're both hitting me up like, dude, how in the hell? And I'm like, I don't know. I think those are things that are going to come out in the wash. I hope they come out in the wash, because, I still have questions about what happened at Mandalay Bay. So I'll be curious to see what comes out of that. And if there is any truth in the fact that there was additional coverage asked for based on a perceived, heightened level of threat, then I think that would be a good question to ask too. Now, I did see where the spokesman for the Secret Service said, he categorically denied, or whatever the statement was he put out on X. And again, I just hope that the sunshine brings that kind of stuff to the light of day. But I know quite a few times for me, I had a specific incident where I was tasked out to go do a surveillance on an individual. He was alluding to threats for a client. The client already had a security detail. What they wanted to identify was like, hey, do we need to increase the level of the detail based on the way this guy's behavior was? So my job was, I actually went and surveilled this guy and did an investigation to see if there was any credible threat there, or if this guy was just running his mouth. And so when you're that individual doing the behavior profiling of that, it is a little bit nerve wracking, because you're like, man, I hope I don't read this wrong. But like in this particular case that I'm talking about, I made the call. I said, hey, I do not see an increased threat. I would maintain the level of security we have. Should anything else change, then yeah, we look at increasing the level of protection detail. But those kind of reevaluations have to constantly be done. And then now when you talk about an individual that's going from place to place to place, like, yeah, you can have SOPs that guide us in how we do and conduct business, but every location is different. Every location has its seams and gaps. And that's the rule of thumb. If there is a seam and gap, somebody, a ruthless opportunist, is going to take the opportunity and try to fill that seam and gap. So
yeah, unless it's just an egregious oversight where a building within 130 yards that offers a perfect vantage point is not only unmanned but unsupervised. And some people in the chat are saying the guy brought a ladder. We have to be careful with certain types of information, but he brought a rifle, and people were in the crowd saying that they were notifying the police. Latest reports, which I'll look at when you're not here, is that he pointed a gun at an officer who confronted him on the roof. Officer backed off. He popped off his shots, and then he got hit. While the other guy probably saw all of this, but allegedly, whether or not he was told not to shoot, did not engage. Some people, I'll ask you this, you let me know if you know, and I know you got to go, so I'm not going to keep you too long, but people are saying that there is a do not engage unless you've been engaged rule that would apply here. To me, it sounds farcically stupid. I don't know if you have any knowledge of that as relates to Secret Service. But like, do you have to wait until shots are fired before you can take out the threat? It's a stupid question as I ask it, but people are saying it.
No, I don't think it's a stupid question. I think it's a question that people will ask because until confronted with situations like this, people never have to think about, well, what would I do in this situation? But even for you as a citizen, a civilian, if you are seeing somebody who is demonstrating a potential, ability, opportunity, jeopardy for serious bodily harm, serious bodily injury, or death, you as an individual have an inherent right to self-defense. That's number one. And I'm no lawyer. I just play a doctor on TV, but I'm pretty sure that's codified in the Constitution of the United States. I have an inherent right to self-defense. As an individual who is a badge wearer, they have the responsibility given to them under the color of the law. Something as simple as me telling somebody to stop, to put a weapon down in an area like that is a secured area, that is failure to comply. And if I can articulate the ability, opportunity, jeopardy, and in law enforcement's case, you have preclusion due. So what did I do to preclude me from having to take these shots? What did I do to give me an opportunity to de-escalate or mitigate this situation so I didn't have to kill this guy? And if all those things fail, that's when deadly force occurs. And it's still homicide, but it's homicide under the letter of the law. So I don't know where people get that misnomer. It's the same thing as like, oh, the guy only had a knife. Couldn't you just shoot it out of his hand? Or why did you have to shoot and kill the guy? He only had a bat. And it's like, no, because the potential for death or serious bodily injury is there. I can demonstrate that. I can bring any manner of subject matter experts up on the stand to talk about that. And I have a laundry list of them. I would. I have 2 lawyers on retainer right now. So, but the point is like, yeah, I don't know if that holds water. I don't know if that's a real thing that took place or if that's just, people trying to be a part of the moment and I was there type of deal. And I think that's going to be the thing that is going to be tough for whoever's doing the investigation, is to weed that stuff out, because they had the same issue with the Kennedy assassination with the first one. So many people there and everybody heard different things. Like last night while you were doing your stream, I saw some of the comments, and I even heard some of the stuff where people talking about hammered pairs versus controlled pairs. And so like a hammered pair or a quote unquote double tap, it's a rapid succession of rounds. And the intention is like, hey, I'm just trying to put as much, usually it's like a failure to stop drill or something like that. But again, having the misunderstanding of not knowing how basically shooting works in tactics and how the physics of a round going through the air sounds. You have the fact that there's the report of the rifle. So when the round's coming through and it's making that crack, and then you have the report of the rifle following it, it sounds like it's two coming, but it's really, no, it's just that same round. So again, trying to weed that kind of information out from people that think they heard something, think they saw something, versus what's actually quality information.
Lynn, I think you might have to go dead on your kid.
Wrap up. From what I've heard from a range of sources, from what you understand about ballistics, that it was because Trump turned his head a half second before the shot is the only reason he's alive. Is that consistent with your understanding of what took place and of ballistics?
I would say, just on first blush of that, I know my reaction to it, and I was like I said, damn, that was close. And yeah, even something as simple as your head being from here to here. I mean, you can even like look right here. If you hit me straight on, right here, yeah, it's going to hit my mandible probably, but still that there's a potential there that if it deflects, hits my mandible, goes through my central nervous system, I'm dead, versus now here, and you hit like that. And I've seen where people, not personally, not the two examples that I gave, but I have seen where incidents where people got hit like in a helmet and that thing rode around the inside of the helmet and went out the other end. I've seen where people got hit in the skull and it rode around the skull and went out the other side and didn't even go penetrate the skull. So it's just, real life is funny that way. Something simple, something just as simple as an angle, a turn, or like that can change everything. I've seen situations where individuals have tried to unalive themselves and they were unsuccessful in doing that because of the angle in which, they had the firearm when they were trying to, end their lives and end up surviving. So, I mean, it's just crazy how the human body is insane. Seen people code out from one shot. I've seen people somehow survive being hit, 20, 30 times. It's just, I'm a man of faith. I'll say this. I am a man of faith. I know I'm standing here today because of that. On my 30th birthday, I took a round through my MVG bracket on my helmet. I got pinned down in the middle of a field, took another round through my cargo pocket. Like, I got hit without getting wounded. I don't know how to explain that other than somebody was looking out for me. So stuff's funny that way.
Lynn, I put both of your links in the comment. What's your handle on Twitter, just so everybody can hear it, and it's in the description. I think
my handle on Twitter is JR Westover. I could be wrong.
And your business site is SLCS. Oh, it's slcsquared.com. That's also in the description.
Yeah.
Lynn, you're gonna teach me a few things when we hang the next time.
Yep. We need to bring Robert out to the farm so he can check it out as well. I'll have some bourbon there for you though, Robert.
Robert.
Amazing. Lynn, thank you very much. It's fantastic. I'll text you afterwards, but thank you very much for popping in.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
All right. Have a good one.